Welcome to Spoonful of Strength, a podcast for people with chronic illness and the ones who love them.
The compassion that you guys have really shines through.
Rachel and Tina cultivate a sense of comfort.
It was such a rewarding experience.
They were great hosts.
It was amazing. You are so kind.
Spoonful of Strength has given us this great platform.
They were so welcoming.
Here are your hosts, Rachel and Tina.
Welcome to this week's episode of Spoonful of Strength. Today, Rachel and I are going to be chatting about finding your purpose while living with a chronic illness. And then we will have Tim joining us, and he is going to share his journey with Crohn's disease, as well as how he found his purpose through his website, invisibleconditions.com, and the work that he's doing with that. So for those that are new to listening to our podcast, I am Tina. I live with fibromyalgia. I have some now new, I guess, chronic back issues with degenerative disc disease and spinal stenosis and all that. And I'm a stage 4 cancer survivor. And then we have my wonderful sister-in-law.
Yes, I'm Rachel. I am living with type 1 diabetes and multiple sclerosis and many other issues, which many of us deal with more than one. And we're so happy that you have joined us today. So, how's your week been, Tina? I know your back has been a big issue for you.
Yeah, my back has just been, the last 5 weeks have just been awful. And I think it was mainly the sciatic. So it was just that sciatic. I don't know who thought that was a good nerve, something that goes so far down your leg and can be so painful. But I had an epidural injection on Monday, and that has, while I'm not 100%, it has at least diminished enough that I feel like I can actually function now and am not in excruciating pain, because I went about 5 weeks with like nothing they were shooting my way, giving me was even touching the pain levels. So it's kind of nice to feel like I'm back into the game, so to speak.
Yeah.
How about you? You've had a lot of appointments and things.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I've had so many appointments the last couple weeks, and I just had a genetic appointment this morning, like a virtual appointment. And so they're sending me some genetic testing that I will do to see if they can find a reason for not only my muscle weakness, but I have mentioned, I think in the past, all 3 of my sons have muscle weakness around their lungs. And so they're kind of using me as the pincushion, so to speak, to see if I can find something and eventually maybe even testing them to see if there's a common thread as to why it's happening. But yeah, it's a constant, but I'm hoping that something will come up that will give us some answers as to all of this. But yeah, so many appointments and so many more coming in January. So it's going to be a little bit busy, but I'm hoping I can get all these appointments taken care of and have some answers and be able to relax a little bit. I'm also going to be starting my physical therapy for my MS coming up in a couple weeks. So that'll be good to try and keep moving, as that is important as well. So we're talking today about finding your purpose. So what does that mean to you?
I feel like a lot of us question, okay, why me? Or what am I supposed to do with this? Being more open-minded of, okay, what's the purpose of there's more to it than just living with it on a daily basis. So what is that purpose?
Yeah. And I think that sometimes that can happen the first time you're diagnosed with something, but also that can happen, I think, when you get to the point where you can't work a traditional 9-to-5 job of like, I went through a lot of depression after I had to decide that I couldn't work the hours and the travel that I had been working and loved. And I really fell into, what am I supposed to do with this? And what is this, what my life looks like? Just, sitting around the house, cooking, cleaning, and dealing with that. And I know that, receiving a diagnosis or, getting to that point can be really tough. Did you ever have a point in your journey, maybe in your cancer journey, where you questioned, like, what is this teaching me, or what is this trying to tell me?
Actually, I went down that path pretty quickly. Like, I remember coming home from the hospital, just finding out about my cancer and just laying in bed. And, Dave and I are like still in that stage of, I can't believe out of the blue that this is happening with no previous signs or anything. But I immediately started going, okay, well, I don't understand why, but there's got to be a reason, there is a reason behind it. And I think it's important to kind of almost embrace that and not make it if you start saying, okay, there's a higher reason, there's a bigger reason for this, then it helps keep you out of going down that rabbit hole of the crap, why is this happening to me type thing.
Yeah. And I think it can change too. We've talked about this, about how your purpose has to change and adapt with you. When I left my job, it was maybe within a year, I started like crafting and making things and selling them on Facebook. And then it turned into an Etsy shop and all of that. And I was getting to enjoying that. And I enjoyed being creative and doing all of those things. And then that got to the point where that was too much. And right. I had to re-examine, okay, it's great that I'm getting all these orders and all of that, but I physically cannot keep up with it. And I'm not very good at budgeting my time. I want to get it done now in case I relapse or in case I'm not feeling good tomorrow. And I was very unhealthy by doing that. I wasn't taking care of myself, and I had to make a decision that this isn't going to work right now because I can't manage it and my health at the same time. So kind of had to look for a different purpose. And I think that has led us here to what we're doing today, which is just finding a place for people with chronic illness to share their stories and have a community for people. Yeah, I remember like this time of year, this would have been your busiest time of year when you were doing your crafting. Like I actually this past weekend took down my beautiful Thanksgiving autumn wreath of that I got from you and hung up my beautiful Christmas wreath hanging on the door. So, yeah. But, I 100% it's going to change. Your purpose changes. And I personally feel like you have to be open to that and embrace where you're being led to do, because otherwise if you fight that of going, oh no, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, this is what I've always done with my life, and you fight it and you want things to be the same versus embracing a new normal, then it just makes everything that you're going through that much more difficult. This is a complicated question. I don't even know if I know the answer to it, but how does one go about finding what that purpose is? Oh, that is a good question. One of the things that we haven't really talked too much, I don't think I've ever even mentioned this in like almost we're almost 2 seasons into here, is one of the things that I was drawn with is really delving into myself more
on a soul level, and kind of tuning into finding your soul's purpose. And there's a program that I actually use. I love helping others. I do a soul realignment reading process to help others kind of tune into get a picture of what their purpose may be on a higher level.
Sounds like a great episode we need to do.
It does, maybe, yeah. Now it's something I really enjoy. It's something I did for myself. And it means a lot, like, because the hard part with that type of work that I did is initially it's just gaining that confidence of going, okay, this doesn't make sense to me with, me getting, how the process that I do. And I'm like, okay, but I'll still share the information that I'm getting. And they're like, oh yeah, that 100% makes complete sense. And it kind of, yeah, this is a whole nother episode, so I don't want to get it. I don't want to get into. I could talk about this whole for 30 minutes. I could talk about how this process and but I believe very, very strongly, and only because I've been shown more than once that if you're not truly living your soul's purpose, then that actually starts manifesting into illness or just one of the Louise Hay was a amazing person that did a lot of work with if your mind, if your soul is out of balance, then that is where you start getting the diseases, or as she would call it, dis-ease, if you look at how it breaks down. Yeah, this is definitely a whole episode thing, and I don't want to keep talking about that on this particular one. But tune into season 3 because I have a feeling this is going to be an in-depth topic on that. But
yeah, definitely. And don't you feel like some people reach into I know we just did an episode a few weeks back about spirituality, but of reaching into their spirituality, whatever that might be, and embracing it more, leaning on it a little bit more, whether that be going back to church or whether it be, really trying to practice that mindfulness, and trying to have something they can believe in and kind of lean on.
Yeah. I think it's important that I know that there are some people out there, and it's easy, and you go, and it's going to be an ebb and flow. And I'm not saying that these people are always like that initially have that, but there's a big difference between the people who and how you maneuver through these chronic illnesses based on your outlook of why is this happening to me versus what is this teaching me.
I'll be the first to admit that I went to why is this happening to me many times, and I've got to get better about really listening to what is this teaching me, because it's difficult, especially getting hit with multiple chronic issues and undiagnosed chronic issues as well, of just like, at what point do I stop getting hit with bad news? Or when am I going to go into a doctor's office and something is better, or something is looking like it isn't going to be a daily issue for me? But that's hard when you're dealing with chronic illnesses, which are most likely progressive and potentially uncurable as well. A lot of the people that follow us on Instagram, some of their purposes are sharing their story. And obviously that's what we do, inviting people on to the podcast to share their story. But you also find a lot of individuals that find comfort or peace in putting themselves out there and sharing the good, the bad, the ugly of their life with chronic illness. We both share on the podcast. I'm not sure that I would be ready to share everything. Personally, I don't think anybody would really care to watch, what I would do every day. But I know that that's something that a lot of people find peace in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a way of raising awareness of, they're just a small little snippet of their daily life. Like I think of Clarity from season 1. Like she's just like, her content creation is just amazing of what she shares out there. And we have others, Rachel, I believe she's one.
Yeah.
Rachel.
The Nap Cave. Yeah.
Yeah. The Nap Cave. She's great, puts herself out there and really, shares, just snippets of, and I think that's important for people to see that.
Yeah, and I think it takes a special person to be able to put yourself out there, good, bad, and ugly. But I know I've come across people that may say something and, oh, I didn't think about that, or maybe that would help me. Or people, especially, I feel like that when you're at the point where you're undiagnosed, but something is definitely going on, that you lean on those people to try and help you navigate your own.
Also, sharing can help you as well. I'm noticing that, when I was going through my treatments, I on Facebook, every time I was in there for a treatment, I would make a post. I did that for over 4 years, because even with every 3 weeks with the Keytruda, I would post, time for Keytruda. And now I look back because it shows up on my memories, and I'm like, okay, well, guess what? I'm 2 years off of Keytruda, which was a hard one for me to give up, because, and I'm still here, but I still see those memories going, okay, you know what? I went through all of that, and and I'm here now to still tell my story. And that's, I think for many of us, a really important reminder of how strong even on the days that we're not feeling so strong now, it just reminds you of how strong you are.
I did post a poll through Instagram about finding your purpose. And I asked a pretty basic question of, do you feel like you found your purpose through your diagnosis? 78% said yes, 22% said no. And so I'm glad that we're getting that people are finding a purpose, whatever that might be.
The question that we posted was, what is your purpose after being diagnosed? And the Nap Cave is spreading empathy, awareness, and love. And Aligned K8 said, sharing my experience with others through my writing, and also becoming a better occupational therapist.
We also had Beautifly 314 said, advocacy for overall health. I look at me holistically to treat me sufficiently. And that's kind of brings me to what one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the advocacy part of it. A lot of the Spoonies that we've interviewed talk about, they just want to raise awareness. They want to talk about it and put it out there for people who don't know about their specific illness. And I think that's a big part of why people have their Instagrams as well, is just to spread awareness for the illnesses that they're enduring.
And then we have some businesses that we want to highlight from Spoonies who found their purpose outside of a traditional job. RL Wellness DC said they haven't been able to work in 14 years. And after the pandemic and letting go of their longtime part-time work, just had to continue to share the practices that have helped them manage their lupus. Business is www.roxannelerner.com.
Yes. And we also have Madre Autoimmune. She has a coaching project that she has started, and we'll link all of these businesses in the description. She has a coaching project. Now, she also is from Madrid. So I've signed up for her newsletter. She was a spoonie that came on and let us interview her last season. And she's got great newsletters, and they translate them to English, or if you're Spanish speaking, it's a great outlet. She talks all things chronic illness. We also have KJ McCarthy. Her business is on Instagram at Blue Sky Adventures. It's a travel business and building team for others. So these are people that have potentially not been able to work the typical 9 to 5 job and have been able to supplement income or just finding their purpose through a business. So we definitely want to highlight those as we go through here. While you're on your phone, come on, I know it's in your hand. Head on over to Spoonful of Strength's Etsy shop at spoonfulofstrength.etsy.com. That's spoonful with 2 L's. We have a wide variety of t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, mugs, and so much more. Anything in the shop can be customized based on your illness. We have sizes from extra small to 5X and many colors to choose from. The best part is most items ship within 2 business days. So head on over to spoonfulofstrength.etsy.com. So I found this quote on Instagram. Again, another spoonie that I follow that was on our podcast, Charu. Her handle is at a.spoonful.of.joy. She was our episode 32 spoonie. She had shared this quote, and I wanted to share it today. It says, your purpose is not the thing you do. It's the thing that happens to others when you do what you do. It's the experience that your energy leaves upon them. By mastering your unique gifts, you step into the realm of the infinite possibilities. The greatest blessing you can give to humanity is owning your purpose and inspiring others to courageously own theirs. I stumbled upon that, and I thought that just kind of encompasses everything we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And yeah, I like that. Like I've seen a smaller version of that quote at the very beginning, and that really resonated with me as far as where those of us that do put ourselves out there in front of others, we're kind of feeding ourselves energetically from the energy we're getting from those that we resonate with, or that they resonate with us.
Yeah. I mean, every person that's agreed to come on and let us talk with them, they're putting themselves out there and sharing their story, but we're getting a lot of good energy and a lot of feeling of purpose from them.
For me, I always enjoy when we see these or we have a guest on and they're like, thank you so much for creating this space for us. It really means a lot to be able to share our stories. And so for us in this podcast, it's about creating a safe space for people to tell their stories.
Yeah. And to provide awareness for all of the different conditions that are out there. And I've said this a million times, but we may all have different illnesses with different symptoms and different futures, but we all still deal with the same thing. And it all just is that common thread of we understand what you're going through, even though we aren't going through the exact same thing. I mean, there's something about, I was talking with Ed the other day and I was having just a moment and I said, you get it, but you can't get it. Like he's so good about like knowing how hard it's been, but he still doesn't get it. And somebody else who's dealing with chronic pain and chronic disease, you just know that they see you in a way that somebody who is healthy can't.
Right. Yeah. They understand at a different level than those that don't live with a chronic illness on a daily basis, on a regular basis.
Yeah. Like I almost wish that like, you know how, have you seen like women who are pregnant and they get like a watermelon and they wrap it around their husbands and they make them do all these jobs and everything. I wish there was a pill or something so that people could just understand, even for an hour or 2 hours or one day, of what it feels like, that never ending fatigue and the pain and all of that, just to get it. But obviously that's not something that
although I would not wish that the sciatic pain that I dealt with on even my own worst enemy on that. So I would not give anybody a pill to
you're like, just trust me, it's horrible.
Just trust me. You do not want you don't want this.
Yeah. Well, whatever your purpose is, as long as it fills your soul, then it's good to do. Let's bring Tim in. I'm really excited to talk with him today because I feel like he has found at least his purpose right now of taking the chronic illness he's been dealing with and turning it into helping others navigate through. So you ready to bring him in?
Yeah. Come on.
All right, let's go.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Tim. We really appreciate you coming onto our podcast. Can you share with our listeners a little bit about you?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm excited to be here just to share a little bit about my story and just to amplify, the voices of those of us who live with a chronic condition. I just love the work that you're doing to help amplify these voices. So my name is Tim. I live just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and I call it just a small town within this city. And so we just love our neighborhood. I live with Crohn's disease. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease when I was about 15. And so over half my life, that kind of maybe dates me a little bit, but for a long time. But for the most of the time, it was in remission, and often in a medication-induced remission. I went on to build a professional career, had opportunities to travel a lot through different organizations, and have done quite a bit in terms of operations, human resources, and kind of by accident, disability inclusion. I never expected to be in this space until a couple of years ago, when I found myself at a place where I was too sick to work. I was too sick for surgery. The Crohn's came completely out of remission. And for those who don't know what Crohn's disease is, it's an autoimmune condition that can attack your entire digestive system. And for me, most of my digestive system was a wreck, a mess. I was in and out of the hospital with internal bleeds, inflammation. It was horrible. And then my doctor said, "Hey, Tim, we could do surgery, but we're going to have to remove everything. Or we can wait, get you on new medication, put you on an extremely high dose steroid to get things under control." And so that's what we elected to do. It took about 5 months to get healthy enough for a surgery and to take out part of my intestine that was just not salvageable. And so that's a little bit about me in a nutshell. I'm a husband. I'm a father of 2 young children, and I also live with arthritis, and that's due to my Crohn's disease. And I also struggle with mental health, with anxiety and depression. So a little bit about me in a nutshell.
Okay, great. Well, let's talk about how it all started. So your Crohn's disease was diagnosed at age 15. What were some of the symptoms and things that kind of jump-started that, and what tests did you have to go through to get that diagnosis?
Yeah, I went to the hospital with what the doctors thought was appendicitis. I was in excruciating pain. And so the doctors thought, because it was on the lower right abdomen, hey, we think there's your appendix is ready to go. So blood tests showed that there was something going on in my body. So went for kind of emergency surgery. Surgeon got in there and went, your appendix is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. So he cut a little bit more, and my incision is quite a bit larger than it should have been for to take out the appendix. And he just went exploring and noticed a lot of inflammation throughout my intestinal tract. And that's how I ended up with a diagnosis. And so I went home from the hospital and started eating everything, as a 15-year-old, junk food and consuming anything and everything. And I was in so much pain all the time until I finally got that diagnosis and got on a medication that helped calm down my insides, if you will. And I would say up until my early 20s, I almost forgot that I lived with a condition. Like I wasn't taking medication regularly and things like that until it decided to come knocking and said, "Hey, Tim, I'm going to lay you out for a while." And it sure did. That was my first surgery was for my appendix. My second surgery was to take out part of my intestinal tract, and then a third surgery just a couple of years ago.
Did you have to make some big diet changes? You talked about how you were, as a teenager, you eat all the junk food, and with Crohn's, I know a lot of certain types of foods or gluten and things like that can exacerbate it.
Yeah, the thing with this condition is what works for one person might not work for another. And so I have friends who said, "Hey, I'm staying away from this food because I live with Crohn's." And for me, like that didn't bother me at all. Like I had no implication on my body to that I knew of. And so it was really hard, even in my 20s, just figuring out what I could and couldn't eat. I still find to this day, if I eat a lot of processed food, a lot of food with unnatural things in it, my guts feel terrible, my body feels terrible, my rosacea just flares up, and I turn beet red right away. And so I've noticed that I need to eat pretty clean, and we do at home anyways. But I know if I'm just craving those chips with all that artificial color and flavor, and I know I'm going to pay for it. And so what I had found when I was going through flares was I would look at a plate of food and I would have to kind of mentally process, is this food going to actually try and kill me, or is it going to nourish my body? Because came to a point where my intestine was almost closed off. Both cases, the first surgery, it would actually so much scar tissue that it had attached itself to other organs. And I was working a strenuous labor job and almost fell into a lot of conveyors and chains and belts that I would have died. And so I'm so grateful somebody caught me. And then the second time around, same thing. So much inflammation caused so much scar tissue that my intestine was almost closed off, to the point where the surgeon said, after surgery, she said, "I don't know how food was passing through your body. It was so narrow." And so when I'm in a flare, I go as much liquid as I can, a plate of raw vegetables or a salad, like it would cause so much pain. So kind of mushy broccoli, and even that, like, the little head of a broccoli, those little pieces could get stuck. And so there's a lot of meal replacement drinks like Ensure. Didn't like Boost. Ensure, for some reason, my taste buds were like, "Oh, this is kind of good." And at one point I was drinking about 6 to 8 of those a day just to get the nutrients I needed. So, diet really depends. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what caused, you said you had a few years where everything was going great. What caused that massive flare up to kind of restart everything?
It was about 4 or 5 years ago, a medication that I was on. I was told by the doctor that your body will eventually build up some antibodies and resist the medication. And I was on this medication, an IV medication, every 8 weeks. I'd go to a clinic, get hooked up, feel terrible for a day, and then I'd be fine again. Until one day it just slowly over time started not working. And it started to manifest as arthritis, my left knee. For some reason, my left knee. And my left knee would swell up and almost to the size of like a small basketball. Like it was massive.
Mm-hmm.
And so rushed to the emergency, they drain it. The ER doctor said, I've never pulled that much fluid out of a knee before. And I'd have to go back 2 days later because it was the same size. It was massive. And then that would slowly go away. And I would then experience some intestinal blockages. And it happened, over time, every 2 to 6 months, I would eat something and it just would get stuck. And that's when we knew something was going on. And from there, just those little small inflammations or small sores in your insides. I know it's kind of graphic and gross, but if you cut yourself, you get the scar tissue, right? It heals and you get that scar on there. Well, that's what happened on my insides. Is it started to scar over and build up and build up and build up over time. And so it wasn't like, I woke up and I couldn't eat. It was a slow progression, and that medication stopped working. So we tried numerous medications, and to a point where when I needed surgery, my doctor was like, we've almost exhausted everything on the market, but there's a new experimental medication here just approved by Health Canada. We could get you on that. And so I got on this medication and it got me healthy enough to have surgery. And I still do it every 8 weeks, comes to my house and this giant cardboard box with a cooler full of ice, and there's instructions. I have, I share pictures on workshops. The instructions are, massive on how to administer this medication, but it's wildly expensive. And so thankful that I've got some health coverage, but seems to be working. So I'm remaining optimistic in that.
Good.
How long ago has it been that you've started that medication?
Oh, about 2 years now.
Okay.
I actually went back to my calendar, and it was just over 2 years ago when I sat in my doctor's office. So we're recording this December 4th, 2024. And it was November a couple of years ago when my doctor said, Tim, like, we need to do this, but you're just a mess. And so that's when it took a couple months after that meeting just to go through all the paperwork and legalities of getting this medication and getting it sorted out, because it was brand new to Canada, and really only 1 or 2 clinics were administering this medication at that time. And now it's a self-administered IV at home. But yeah, it's been a journey.
So 6 years ago, you developed arthritis, and that was due to the Crohn's. Then how does that affect you on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's some days I wake up really sore. Some days I am fine. Like today, just before we sat down for recording, I went for a power walk. I love to walk. I love to cycle. I don't cycle as much as I used to, just because my joints, typically my knee, my feet, and my ankles is what's affected. And so I've had to alter some daily activities. I used to mountain bike. So I live on the west coast of British Columbia, really known for mountain biking. I would spend so much time in the mountains, and we've moved further away from the mountains. So I use that as an excuse, but it was also, I just don't have the energy for it anymore. And I don't have the energy to deal with recuperation afterwards. So I might feel good today, so I'll push myself hard. And maybe people can relate when you live with a chronic condition, right? You wake up and you're like, I feel good. I'm going to clean the house, go for a walk, meet a friend for lunch, and then I'm going to, hike a mountain and swim the ocean and all this stuff. And then the next day or for the next 2-3 weeks, you're just like laid out on the couch sleeping. And that's honestly how even I feel today. I've been pushing myself so hard, and I just like need to tap out. And, I'm out of spoons. That's what I'm feeling, right? Just that energy is depleted.
Yeah, it's hard to not want to, when you live, a lot of your days are not feeling well, and then you wake up and you're like, oh, I have a great day. I'm going to do all this stuff. I think it's something that we're all guilty of.
Mm-hmm.
Now you mentioned with the scar tissue building up and with you being in remission and not having any symptoms, but Was it still doing the damage in the background, even though you were asymptomatic at the time?
I believe so. I'd go for blood work and there was signs of blood loss, but just no like physical signs. And so we knew something was going on in my body for quite some time. I'm I'm anemic as it is, and so when you start seeing your iron levels and your hemoglobin start dropping, and you just go, okay, well, where's that going? And even the doctors are like, there's likely something going on, uh, but unless we do a colonoscopy, we won't know. I've gone through so many colonoscopies, and I say I'm a self-proclaimed expert. So I've got lots of tips and tricks. Actually, a couple days before recording this, a friend reached out to me, was like, "Hey, a friend is stressed about going for a scope. What advice do you have?" And so I run through my checklist with them. But that's how we would determine that something's going on. And remember that first scope and saying, "Hey, there's some signs of inflammation." And when there's signs of inflammation, then there's going to be signs of scar tissue. And, 6 months later, go for another scope. It's like, well, there's more inflammation. And then go for a scope a couple months later. It's like, well, actually, that inflammation looks like it's subsided. So I think we're out of the woods. And then go for another scope 6 months later and going like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. And we've got inflammation from top to bottom. And then comes the prednisone steroids, which I don't know if people are familiar with that med.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, everybody has different reactions to it, but for me, I would go completely manic, mood swings, not be able to sleep, to the point where I love to bake. That's one of my kind of hidden hobbies, is baking. And I was determined to develop a recipe. So I'd wake up at 2 a.m. and just start baking, to the point where my kids were like, "Dad, no more muffins. Like we don't want to try anymore." But I was determined, and I just get so fixated on things in that period of time. And that was for months, like sleeping a couple hours a day and just a wreck, just a complete mess. But it did what it needed to do.
Join Spoonful of Strength on Instagram, a community open to everyone. Whether you have a chronic illness or support someone who does, you are welcome at Spoonful of Strength. You'll get preview clips of the upcoming episodes and insight into my world as a spoonie. That's Spoonful of Strength, spoonful with 2 L's, on Instagram. And you mentioned previously that you also live with anxiety and depression. Was that a result of dealing with a chronic illness, or had you had some of that as a younger child?
I've always lived with high anxiety or higher anxiety, and an overactive mind. My mind loves to go to what ifs all the time. It went there extensively recently, and so it's something that I live with, and I seek support on, and I'm not afraid to admit that, and not afraid to say, "Hey, if you need support, go find it. It's there." So I've lived with anxiety and depression for a large part of my life, and I know I know the triggers, I know the symptoms. I'm still terrible at admitting it, but I think something that's worked for me is, even with my wife, we've been married for quite some time, and I'll just even send her a text if I'm down in my office or she's out. I'll say, "Hey, I'm feeling really low right now, just as a heads up." Because, kids will come home from school and want to play, and they're still quite young. And if I know that I'm just mentally exhausted or just mentally struggling, it's being able to communicate that out is incredibly important to me, and helps me feel better. But also, I record on my podcast, I put out, it's called journal entries, and they're just a little glimpse of what's going on in my mind. And I record so many, I don't publish them all, but it's, for me, a therapeutic way just to get the thoughts out of my mind, verbalize them, and just file them away, and just talk through things. And once in a while I publish them, just because I think, oh, maybe it'll be helpful to somebody, just how I'm trying to navigate something. But yeah, finding those little tools that has really kind of served me and helped support me.
Have you found your anxiety has gotten worse because of the the chronic illness, sometimes I find that a lot of my anxiety is the what ifs of, feeling maybe you're having a rough day and you're not feeling well. What could this be? Or all of those things. Do you feel like that's added another layer to the anxiety and the depression?
Oh, absolutely. When I was at a place too sick to work, too sick for surgery, here I was for 5 months, just like, what's my worth? Is this as good as it's going to get? Um, my kids need a dad who can play with them, and I'm just sleeping on the couch most of the day. And after surgery, I was so anxious of like, I gotta find a source of income. Like we're living on savings, and when you try to live on savings in this economy, it's challenging. A side note on that, we have an incredible community around us that have supported us and with childcare and food and gift cards and just, because I've been quite vocal about this journey, it had allowed others to be able to help. But it was, I think, like 4 weeks, 6 weeks after surgery, and I should have been still on the couch. I found a job and I started working. And I was limping, it was an in-office job, and I was still curled over because of I've got a massive incision on my intestine, like they cut open all my abs, and I was like, I need a job. So I found a job. It's a job that I was grateful to have, just did not give me any fuel or energy, and it was actually more stressful and way more stressful than I could have handled, and so I ended up leaving. And there I found myself again unemployed, which is scary. I'm pretty risk adverse as a individual, and so my purpose doesn't come from that work, but also knowing that I want to provide for my kids and my family and my partner and feel like I'm contributing, and I just wasn't. So that was a pretty dark time.
I think that for a lot of people, it's difficult to take that step back and realize, okay, my job is actually to take care of myself and focus on my health. It's a struggle I'm going through as well myself of going, okay, I need to get out and find a job, but when I do, it starts impacting my health. So, it's a tough balance to find for I think a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tell us about your invisible condition. When did that start? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, invisiblecondition.com. I started that after my last surgery. In a previous life, I was a podcast host for a pretty reasonably sized organization and had an opportunity to host their show. And I missed it. I just missed that connection with complete strangers, sharing stories, and for me, just also learning. So I thought I'm just gonna bought the domain Invisible Condition, surprised it was available, put up a website, hired a graphic designer to come up with the logo and stuff. And it was a little bit of investment. I thought I'm just gonna throw out a couple episodes and see what happens. And I reached out to a couple friends, say, hey, do you want to be on the show? And everybody said yes. And then something happened that I just did not expect. Complete strangers, people I'd never met before, started reaching out and saying, I think it's now time to tell my story. And I was like, wow, okay, let's tell your story. It got to a point, I was releasing an episode a week while working, and I was just like, I'm burning out. And my backlog at one point was 6 months long. And my focus is on invisiblecondition.com is really around self-advocacy. And I think many of us, or maybe I'll generalize, all of us who live with a chronic condition have had to advocate for ourselves, and maybe we struggle to advocate for ourselves. And so I want to learn from others about how do you advocate for yourself? What has worked? What hasn't worked? So I've started off there and started talking a little bit more on LinkedIn, a professional network, about disability inclusion. And that's now led to me having opportunities to come into workplaces and talk about disability inclusion. But really, it's about that individual. And I want to provide a platform for people to share, similar to what you're doing, right? Just to amplify our voices, because when we think of a quarter of the population at a minimum, these are stats in Canada and the US, live with a disability. I think that's an underrepresented number. How do we find our voice? How do we end the stigma, that fear, that judgment, and turn that into advocacy, hope, and change? That's the goal.
Your website, I got a chance to look at your website, and you also offer like one-on-one coaching and workshops as well. Tell us how those work.
Yeah, coaching. It's something that I've hired a coach in my professional career before. I have coached others. I started my certification process, and I just feel like I want to offer support at a reasonable rate. You hire a professional coach, especially like in the workplace, they could start at $150 to $300 an hour. And I think I've got a rate on my site, which I need to take down, but I want to offer support and that mentorship, or just a sounding board for people. So, it's kind of a pay what you can model. We work out something that is fair and reasonable to everyone, because I want it to be accessible. I feel that, and even for me, trying to navigate the workplace, navigate my condition, navigate the self-talk, having a sounding board and having somebody there to just ask some prompting questions is incredibly helpful. And so that's the coaching and kind of mentor support. On the workshops, it was kind of by accident. Organizations started reaching out and saying, "Hey, do you offer workshops?" And I said, "Sure." And they said, "Well, could you offer, what do you offer?" So I just kind of made up a few titles, and they said, "Awesome, let's do it." And so just kind of figuring out on the fly. But one that I'm extremely passionate about is about the words we use have impact, and how do we confront the fear and stigma in disability inclusion, and focusing on those words. And it's rooted in a very vulnerable and personal story of somebody saying to me, complete stranger, walked past me and said, "You should smile," and just kept walking. I've had somebody just a week before surgery say, "Are you sure you need surgery? You don't look sick." And often those words have no ill intent, but they have so much impact, especially when we're going through it. When we're fighting that battle and going through it, those words have impact. So that's one that I love to talk about in the workplace and really focus in on. And as well as like Disability Inclusion 101. And again, my career is not, and my education is not based on this, and I'm learning as I'm going. And it's just through story that I'm trying to change that narrative within workplaces. So if we want to disclose, or we need to ask for an accommodation, we're not fearful, and it's not met with judgment. And it's not met with, "Well, you don't look sick, so don't take a sick day," or "You need to have your camera on at all times." It's like, well, actually that hurts my eyes. Like I get migraine, that's what we need to do. And so if we can change one workplace, it's amazing. If I can help one person figure out how to ask for an accommodation in a constructive, collaborative, curious way, then that's, my cup is full. So
important.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like, and that's one thing that we've talked about with quite a few people, is finding your purpose through out of all of this. That there's like what we go through for many of us is, okay, well, what am I supposed to be doing with this? And not just for us on a personal level, but what am I supposed to be doing to help others? So it sounds like you definitely have stepped into that.
I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to figure this out. Even just before recording, I was chatting with my wife about purpose, and opportunities to go into workplaces are amazing. And it's that balance of, hustling to get into a workplace versus, as you, Rachel, like you've got to edit this episode, and then you got to do all the social media and publish art, it's like, there's a lot. And so I'm feeling out of balance right now, and just trying to figure out I really want to help individuals. That's what I need. That was the purpose at the original, and that's going to be that main focus. Workplaces, if you're listening to this, bring me in. I'm here to talk to you. But individuals, right? It's reach out and I love that. We all have a purpose, understanding what that purpose is. And my purpose, I think, is loosely just, I just want to help people. I just want to support people.
Right. Yeah. That sounds, it's amazing what you're putting out there. Did you find that, because you spoke about finding that job initially and it not working for you energetically, just too much. So now that you're stepping into your invisible illness, and going into the workplaces and your one-on-one coaching, do you feel that is do you feel healthier in all, whatever many aspects of healthy, of stepping into that as a career?
Absolutely. I've work a part-time job, because we've got bills to pay. These lights have to stay on. Invisible condition just doesn't pay the bills, and maybe one day it will. And so I think for me, it's been the reframing of my mind of there's work out there, and I know I'm going to find, I'm looking for another position right now. And so I know there's something out there. And whether it's in the disability inclusion space, the operations, whatever it is, I know I can add value. For this project, it took a turn at some point where it was like, this needs to be the breadwinner, which then my brain is business oriented. So it's now operations, financial models, forecasts, and then that just honestly started to make it not impactful anymore. And so it's always going to be there, invisible condition, like this invisiblecondition.com. And, I'm even going through that change of, what is it going to be? And it's a place for story. It's a place for resources. It's going to be a place for one-on-one support, workshops. If organizations want to talk about this, one day I hope it supports me and my family. But that is, that may or may not come, and that's okay. And being okay with it. I don't know how you feel about that as well, just with these projects, and we're so passionate about it. But if we get wrapped up in the monetization, we need to build the audience, we need to build our following. It's draining. And somebody recently said to me, she's brand new to social media, she's got an interesting podcast called Encountering. And she said she's never struggled with anxiety and depression. And I know those two different things, but in her life. And she's a PhD. She just finished her PhD research, just defended it. She was in the school system for 30 plus years. She said, I now don't sleep at night because I have to try and do everything and chase the algorithms. And so I'm making that conscious decision of, I'm not chasing algorithms. I'm doing this for the people who want to share their stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's wonderful. I can definitely see that. I went through a time where it was overwhelming, and I've gotten to that place where I'm like, well, it really, as long as we have people that want to come on and share their story, then that's all that we need. That's why we're doing it. It's not to become millionaires, and we're getting the love just from talking to people, and that's enough, for us. So it's been so great to have you on. I really, really appreciate you taking time out of your day to spread your website and all the great things that you're doing. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, it's just that. It's invisiblecondition.com. That's the first place to go to. You can check out all the episodes there, Apple and Spotify, or through the website, YouTube. Connect with me on Instagram. It's at invisible_condition. And so you can connect with me there. If you happen to be on LinkedIn, you can search my name. It's Tim Reitsma, Reitsma. I'm quite active on that platform as well. So happy to connect, answer any questions, or just, if you just are struggling with something, let's chat. I'm always interested in interesting people to talk with. And also on the website, I have 2 written interview series that I'm always looking for people to contribute to. One is a written interview where you just fill out the form. I send you the questionnaire. Actually, I think the questions are actually on the website now. It's about self-advocacy, because I think we all have a good story to share that somebody can learn from. There's also another one, if you are a business leader, HR professional, it's about disabilities in the workplace and sharing about what organizations are actually doing for disability inclusion. So a couple ways there.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I've listened to a number of episodes, and I just love how you two have such a great dynamic at the beginning. As a solo host, I'm like, oh, I want that. And I'm like, do I have like a dual conversation? And I love that.
We don't say it too often, but I married her brother. So we're actually sisters-in-law. And we've known each other for, I think my husband and I have been together 25 years. So we know each other pretty good. And so we can,
was it a couple years before that we were working together?
Yeah. She and I were working together, and then she introduced me to her brother. So it's, we've had quite a bit of time to get to know each other.
Thankfully, she doesn't hold that against me.
There are days I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, we really appreciate that. That's very kind of you.
All right, take care. Pleasure to chat.
Thank you.
We'll talk
Take
again.
care, Tim.
All right, bye-bye. So I think Tim was one of my favorite interviews. I really enjoyed all that he's doing for chronic illness.
Yeah.
I just really enjoyed talking with him.
I resonated a lot with, some things that he's gone through and what he's doing and putting himself out there. And it was a great guest.
Yeah, definitely. Can you believe our next episode is our final episode for the season?
Yep. Wrapping up the end of the year and wrapping up season 2. So
crazy.
I know.
So we're going to wrap up season 2 by having a little bit of fun. And we're going to talk a little bit about humor being the best medicine. Sometimes when you're dealing with so much pain and all of that you need to have a little bit of humor in your life. We'll also be talking about some of our missteps that we have had. And we're just going to leave season 2 on a great note. We also are going to be interviewing our last spoonie of season 2. We're going to bring in Christy, and Christy's going to talk about her MS, and she's also a breast cancer survivor as well. So we're going to take some time to talk with Christy, and we're going to have fun for the last episode of the year, last episode of season 2. So we hope that you all have a great week, and we're looking forward to talking with you next week. Take care.